should be proud, cause you look so good, baby. I might just forget to pull out. And when I pull up, that you...
What is going on, everyone? It's your boy 3MJ. We are back with another video. Now, I know I probably look super orange. I'm gonna try to like fix up the coloring in this. My camera, I just turned the bitch on, decided to hit the record button. Plus the lighting that I have here makes me look a little bit more orange. It actually makes me look really orange. Holy shit. Anyways, though, I want to get right into this. We're gonna talk about Modern Warfare. I'm gonna give you guys my honest thoughts and opinions based off of what we watched earlier in my live stream, the gameplay that was displayed earlier on Twitch from Pro Syndicate, Optic TP, Courage, and if I'm not mistaken, who's the other one? Legion. So I want to make it clear that I cannot judge the full game in its entirety because it was featuring a new mode called Gunfight, which is a 2v2 mode, and it's very limited. I want to make this clear. What you saw in the stream or from their stream pretty much pertains to only that mode. You cannot customize no class setups, perks, or anything or whatnot. They already have generated class setups, and it's made pretty much for you and another buddy, or for you and your, a random going up against another person. It's a 2v2 mode, and it's not something that's broad, so you can only grasp pretty much just the combat or the gameplay or just the movements, and that's what I'm going to be judging the game off of, and just how it looked, in my opinion. Not necessarily the game types. The game mode looked pretty fun. I think it's pretty cool to hear that and to learn that you'll be able to host your own little tournaments, and it has a generated bracket system so that you don't have to manually do it yourself, and that's pretty cool. If I want to host that with some subscribers or other YouTubers or whatnot, that's pretty damn dope. As far as the gameplay goes, I'm pretty much sold on the fact that it looked very grounded. They had a lot of things happening in that game that I enjoyed personally, with of course plenty of drawbacks that I'm going to discuss in a moment. One thing I enjoyed the most is, and one thing I was very pleased to see, was how slightly the difference between this COD and Black Ops 4, this COD and all the other Call of Duties that's been coming out over the last few years. And that's weird because a lot of people are complaining that it doesn't look like Call of Duty. Well, from what I saw is once you're running and gunning, I get the Call of Duty look on it, but it reminds me of a Rainbow Six mixed with Battlefield Hardline. If you look closely, as soon as you start shooting, I get all that weird kickback and motion from like a mix of Battlefield Hardline more with Rainbow, but when you actually just walking around and the movement of your gun and the sound effects and everything that's going on gives me very much of a Rainbow Six feel. And I think they did that on purpose, because they wanted to make sure that what was being judged on the game was its appearance and how, I guess, it made people feel for its look. Because had they put a team deathmatch, people would have probably complained that the game looks the same as always despite the graphics. So people were judging it, calling it two games that are actually not bad at all. In my opinion, Rainbow Six is a really fire-ass first-person shooter. Not much is said though based off of this 2v2 mode. Again, it's very limited, so a lot of things were taken out for that reason. It's almost like League play. It's very restricted with just what's allowed to be used and not allowed to be used. I'm gonna say here, let's not judge the game's graphics, not because, oh, when the game comes out it might look better, but I was streaming it off of another stream, so the quality was dubbed like probably 3 times by the time it hits you guys. And just like when they were streaming it off of Twitch, you got a little bit of insight of how the game may look graphically, but their stream was 900p. And I think the reason why is because I believe the game was probably wonky as fuck had they used all texture materials in game. So they probably dubbed the quality and added the motion blur so that it could have at least compensated for the lack of textures and graphics. And I can understand that because games do that all the time when they showcase games pretty early. I'm not a fan of the fact that this game has 2 features of motion blur, which one is the world and one is your weapon, because that tells you one of 2 things. One, this game may lack detail in terms of its textures, so they add motion blur to give more of a more realistic feel and look for its surface, rather than just having a graphical looking game. And perhaps for consoles, the motion blur might be used the most, so to compensate for its lack of textures compared to a PC port version, which may have more options. That is why I believe the game has motion blur to that extent. I'm not a fan of motion blur at all. I can see that there was a lack of detail on the weapons. I can obviously depict or point out which weapons is which, but that motion blur shit is not for me. And as far as adding motion blur to the world, it kind of fucked up the draw distance in each map, especially Pine, which reminds me completely of a Ghost map. And I think that's probably the worst map in a 2v2 because it made people camp more versus the other two maps. But that being said, I'm just gonna say a few things that I've noticed in the game. Movement obviously looked like more of a Rainbow Six feel. When you started running, there's two ways of running. You have its regular run, which I believe you can still shoot in some points, but then you have, I think when they toggled it again, you see when their gun extends and they start running faster, and that's where I get the more Call of Duty Battlefield Hardline feel, because you start noticing the way they start running. And also, I don't know, it sounds kind of stupid, but their hand detail reminds me a lot of Battlefield Hardline. Where you come from Battlefield 4, you go to Battlefield Hardline, you see more of a cartoonish look. I got that from this game with the hand, a detail and stuff like that. So it looks a lot like Battlefield Hardline. What drew my attention was the weapon kickback, the sound effects of each weapon, the smoke coming out of the barrels of the gun. I believe the sound effects of you getting hit when the bullets were flying back at you, the cracking sounds, that sounded very dope. That sounded kind of intense because it kind of like pointed you to like, whoa, let me like fall back. I seen how they were playing, and that seemed very nice too. I like that a lot. One thing I'm gonna say what's gonna damage this game, well, let me get to the good parts. I was pleased to see modern weapons and its names. MP5 and MP7 is probably my favorite submachine guns of all time, so I'm very pleased to see that they had that in the game. Displayed also with the holographic sight. I thought that was very well made as a class setup to be shown in the game to show us how it looks and feels. I just love how the recoil patterns looked in the game. They met well with the guns, especially when you hit off enemies. I loved how it looked. The pistols were probably displayed the best in my opinion. The way the pistols for me has always been like a bitch gun in my opinion. More like, I hated the sound effects. It didn't feel as raw to me and that impactful, but they seem so effective in this game. There's such a kickback on your screen and on yourself that it makes it more fun. So if you end up choking in the game, you kind of get like pissed off, but at the same time, you see how effective a pistol looks in that game when you're hitting an enemy. I can see myself now creating a class with like just pistols just because of how effective it looked. 3 shots is gonna kill him. With a DE in the head, it's 1 shot, 2 shots to the body. I thought that was awesomely displayed. I thought it was displayed perfectly well how pistols were designed. I seen how grenades look. I love that they throw grenades like real people and not fucking like bitches and shit. Like, this shit look really well designed. One thing I've also noticed is they added like a crouch system or a mantle system where it doesn't have to be an LMG or a sniper rifle, but pretty much, or a rifle. But like if you have a pistol and you're near a wall, you can mantle yourself. I think that's very useful, and I'm not gonna complain about that feature or animation, because one thing I always say, it's never enough to give us enough. And that's, if that even made sense. But anyways, it's me pretty much saying, if you're gonna offer us something and it's not gonna take away from anything else, keep giving us more. So that's probably gonna be useful for objective game types that's gonna require you to be more of like stealthy, like search and destroy, or perhaps that 2v2 mode. I can see that be used for sniper rifles at a distance. Head glitching I seen in the game, it didn't seem as crazy, but again, it's a 2v2, so the way these guys were playing, it didn't look as, wild or kind of like fucked up to where we're gonna judge the game in its entirety. But that looked good. They added an animation out for stabbing people in the neck or whatnot. Hopefully we get more dope animations. That'll be fire. I seen the melee system, it looked pretty much the same. But overall, I think grenades, I think the attachments to the weapons, I love how it was designed. One thing I gotta salute and take my hat off to them is that the UI system is very simplistic, very simply designed. Black Ops 4 has a fucking overhaul of shit on their UI. I just think the real estate of the screen is trash. And to know that this mode removes the minimap, I don't know if all the other modes do, but this mode removes the minimap if I'm not mistaken. There's no health regen, only for this mode in particular. But I love how the screen real estate looked. It looked very simple. You knew what was what. It didn't look crazy, it didn't look chaotic, and I felt like it was more to the actual shooter than it was to see what's all the shit on your screen. So I was really happy to see that as well. You couldn't see, I'm just really pleased with seeing all the weapons. I know they're talking about having way more weapons than usual. Somebody bullshitted and said they got like 20 maps coming. Fuck out of here. World War II, they gave us fucking 7 maps. Like, it was bullshit. But with that being said, that looked promising for Modern Warfare. This seemed more like it catered to an adult or to a more mature audience versus the kids who like to double jump or use abilities and throw down mad shit or some futuristic shit or use a laser or something like that. This seemed just like traditional Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare 2, and Modern Warfare 3 COD. And that's something I liked a lot. One thing I'm gonna say that I did notice that I'm actually pleased with, or something they said, was in COD Ghost, their color palette due to the engine only allowed for grays, greens, doodle looking yellows and browns, and that's why the game's palette was so ugly in Call of Duty Ghost. Whereas in this COD, I can depict and see the greens looking greens and the reds looking reds, even with the map of this open map having like the grays and the browns and stuff. So I was pleased to see that as well, and I'm hoping that in other maps where there's blues and oranges and pinks and reds and shit, they could be well displayed versus having the grays and greens. Like that was COD Ghost. COD Ghost looked like a pile of doo-doo. Like that's how it looked. But other than that, I was very pleased to see that. The huge drawbacks was the hitbox. If you guys don't fix that damn hitbox, people are gonna leave that game, because I seen a part where he sniped a dude. I don't know which one. I think Optic TP sniped somebody, and the hitbox, it shot him over there, but it showed that he died. And I slowed it down for you guys. We can't keep having that. I seen a clip where he shot him from a distance with a pistol and he missed. A lot of their kills, the hitboxes were off. We cannot have that in this COD. I'm sorry, we cannot. And that's also leading towards the fact of when you shoot first, die first, or whatever. I seen kill trading. Not a fan of that shit. Not a fan of that at all. I just don't like it because I don't feel like it's official kill trading. I don't feel like it's an official kill. I see it more like there's maybe input lag or something taken away from screen from the game itself, maybe due to the engine, or there's an overhaul or something, and therefore it creates like this sort of lag in the game. I'm not a fan of that at all. They need to fix that shit. I'm not a fan necessarily of the shotgun. I forgot what it was, and don't get me wrong, the pellets, I understand, spray, whatever, but from that much of a distance, homie looked like he could have sniped them from that distance, and it still has somewhat of hit markers. I don't want it looking like you could just snipe people with shotguns from a distance, depending on the map. And from those, I can't really judge maps because those were 2v2 maps, so I can't go based off of that. The game looked promising. Fix the damn hitboxes. I love the health system. Like, it was only 100. You seem like you can die relatively quickly. I'm loving all the sound effects. It seemed like they went very in with sound effects in the game, whether it was like moving from your clothing, all that stuff, all the small stuff, attention to the details, what kind of brings you up to wanting to like really take this game serious. I know a lot of people are gonna complain, oh, this doesn't feel like it, doesn't look like it. You can't expect to get a COD that was your favorite COD of like your first COD. You're not gonna get that anymore. We are complaining so much, so therefore, I'm sorry to say this, if you're gonna steal some shit from a game, you better steal it and fucking murder that shit. Meaning, like, you better make this game even better than what you stole it from. You can't just steal something from a game and your game is ass. So if you're gonna steal from Rainbow Six or another game, you better make sure whatever you've taken or influenced by, and you better like really turn it up to make it more pleasing than the game you took it from, and make it fucking well done so that it pleases your audience. That's just me. Because you gotta remember, man, this game has been out for almost like 15, 16 years. You gotta kind of keep up with the times and what's kind of in. Don't get me wrong, Activision just blatantly be stealing shit. They fucking came out of nowhere with their Battle Royale. They came out of nowhere with mad shit looking like they just took from just every game. But if they're gonna execute well with this one, I'm not here to complain about it. Look at H1Z1. They didn't want to keep going. PUBG came out of nowhere and started blowing that shit out the wind. They didn't want to keep going. Fortnite came out of nowhere and started blowing it out the wind. Then you had the fucking first person ones like Apex that are cooking, but Fortnite's still becoming relevant. It's still relevant because they're always adding content. As far as Call of Duty goes, if you're gonna take from another shooter or influence from another shooter, see what's in right now, you better execute that shit the best way possible. And from this game, it looked very promising. They still need a lot of work done. Hitboxes, I wanna know if those graphics are gonna look like that, or they're gonna add more textures perhaps. Like Black Ops 2 added like a texture pack. I remember that on the PS4. I don't know if the Xbox had a version of it, but the PS4. But that motion blur gotta go. It's just my personal thoughts. But I'm very pleased to see that we are getting back Modern Warfare. Just a grounded fucking multiplayer game. I'm praying at the map sizes, because this was a very pleasing map display for 2v2. I'm hoping for 5v5, 6v6, and if they do the ground war modes, that we have very pleasable kind of like maps. You know, fun maps to play as. And again, we can't fully judge this game until we see a full-on regular TDM where they're fucking playing with kill streaks. So until then, that's all I gotta say. It's your boy 3MG. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Everything you feel about this game. But remember, the full multiplayer reveal is August 1st. But grounded, based on those core things you guys saw, drop your thoughts. It's your boy, I'm out. Peace.
I like to see it go a little further. Know what I'm saying? The more like a boring story. If I make a movie, then you score it. If I got a shot, then you be torn. That means you gon' wake up to the morning.